Hello and welcome to the Lingusphere Academy podcast, a place where we explore the English you really need for the conversations you actually want to have. I'm Alex.
And I'm Sam. It's wonderful to have you here. Today we're tackling one of the most reliable, joy-filled topics in any language. It's not about work or the weather. It's about companionship, funny stories, and little moments of pure connection. We're talking about pets.
Whether you have a dog who thinks you're the center of the universe, a cat who graciously allows you to live in its home, a quiet fish, a chatty bird, or no pet at all, this conversation is for you. Talking about animals is a universal language of its own, and today we're going to give you all the tools you need to speak it fluently in English.
We're going to move step by step, from that very first simple question all the way through to telling those heartwarming and hilarious stories that every pet owner collects. We'll cover the vocabulary, the sentence structures, and the cultural nuances. By the end, you'll feel prepared, confident, and ready to connect with anyone over this wonderful topic.
So let's begin at the very beginning. Sam, why is "do you have a pet" such a brilliantly effective piece of small talk?
It's effective because it works on so many levels. First, it's positive. You're asking about a source of joy. Second, it's personal but not private. It lets someone share a piece of their life without pressure. And third, it's a storytelling invitation. The answer is never just yes or no, it's a doorway.
A doorway. That's a perfect way to put it. And the way you ask the question can slightly change which door you open. You have the classic, "do you have a pet?" You have the slightly broader, "do you have any animals?" And you have the one that taps into nostalgia, "did you have pets growing up?"
And the responses you get will beautifully guide the conversation. Let's walk through the most common ones. You get the enthusiastic, "yes." This is a direct invite to dive right in. You get the hopeful, "no, but I'd love to someday." This leads to a chat about dreams and preferences. You get the nostalgic, "not anymore, but we had a wonderful dog when I was little." This is a path down memory lane. And you even get the humorous, "no, my houseplant is responsibility enough for me," which is a funny, disarming way to participate.
I love that. Every single answer is valid and starts a connection. There's no wrong answer. Now, let's walk through that first, most common path, the enthusiastic yes. When someone says yes, your next question is almost a reflex. It's, "oh, what kind?" or "what do you have?" And I want to pause here for a crucial public service announcement for all English learners.
Please, yes.
You do not need to know the specific official breed name. I'll say it again for everyone in the back, it does not matter. Most native speakers, when asked this, will give wonderfully vague, charming answers. The goal is not scientific precision. The goal is to give a general idea so the other person can start to form a picture.
So what are these perfectly acceptable, wonderfully common answers? The beautifully simple, a dog, a cat, a rabbit. This is complete. This is enough. The slightly more colorful, a big, fluffy dog, a small, sleek black cat. The very common, we're not sure. He's a rescue, so we're not totally sure, maybe part shepherd. She's the best little mutt you'll ever meet. Note, mutt for dog is a common, affectionate term for a mixed breed. The humorously vague, we call him our brown dog. He's one of a kind. The specific, if you know it, a golden retriever, a Siamese cat. The message is clear. A dog is a fantastic answer. The conversation is about to get much more interesting than pedigree.
Because after "what kind" comes the question that truly brings the animal to life. It's the gateway to personality. What's he/she like? Or what's their personality like? This is where you move from facts to feelings. This is where you need your descriptive vocabulary. Let's build that vocabulary together, not as a list to memorize, but as a palette of colors to paint with.
Let's start with the energetic and playful crew, words for pets who are always in motion. Playful, energetic, full of beans, a live wire, always on the go. For puppies and kittens, bouncy, frisky. And there's a fantastic modern term, to get the zoomies. This describes those sudden, frantic bursts of energy where a pet runs around at top speed, often in circles. Every evening, right after dinner, she gets the zoomies and races through the apartment.
They're opposites, the calm and gentle souls. Chilled out, laid back, a couch potato. Gentle, serene, peaceful, quiet, easygoing. You might say, he's the most low-maintenance dog, just wants to nap at your feet. Or she's not a lap cat, but she's a nearby cat, always peaceful and close by.
The clever and observant ones. Smart, clever, intelligent, bright, observant, curious. When that cleverness leads to mischief, too smart for his own good, a little escape artist, inquisitive. We had to get a special trash can because she learned how to open the old one, not for food, just to see what was inside.
The affectionate and loyal companions. Cuddly, affectionate, loving, loyal, a total lap dog or lap cat. A Velcro dog. They stick to you. My shadow, a love bug. He's not happy unless some part of him is touching some part of you.
And finally, the pets with big personalities and quirks. Sassy, mischievous, stubborn, independent, a diva, dramatic, has her own mind, a real character, a goofball, silly. She has a very specific meow she uses only when her food bowl is perceived to be empty. It's a full performance.
Now, let's put this into practice dialogue. Sam, do you have a pet?
I do. I have a dog named Archie.
What's he like?
Archie is a mix of contradictions. He's incredibly affectionate, a total Velcro dog who follows me everywhere, but he's also got this wonderfully stubborn streak. If he decides he doesn't want to come inside from the garden, he'll lie down and pretend to be asleep. And he's inexplicably terrified of cardboard boxes. A new delivery is a traumatic event for him.
See, in 3 sentences, I don't just know Archie is a dog, I know he's affectionate, stubborn, and has a specific, funny fear. I have a vivid, engaging picture. That's the power of descriptive personality words. You've created a character.
And creating that character naturally leads to the next inevitable question. That's hilarious. Does he do other funny things? Or any good stories about him? This is the pinnacle of pet conversation, the sharing of anecdotes.
The best pet stories are rarely about grand adventures. They're about small, specific, everyday moments that perfectly capture the pet's essence. They're slice-of-life vignettes, and they have a simple, effective structure that you can use every time.
Think of it as a 3-act play in miniature. Act 1, the normal situation, the setup. Keep it simple. Last Thursday, I was working at my desk. We have this one rug she's not supposed to lie on. Every morning when the postman comes. Act 2, the pet's unexpected action, the twist. What did they do? And I heard this strange crinkling sound from the kitchen. So, of course, the second I leave the room, she's sprawled in the middle of it. And when I walked back in, she gave me a look that clearly said, "Your rules are suggestions." And one day the postman left a treat through the letterbox. Now the barking has a hopeful tail-wagging quality. He's been bribed to a truce.
Let's build a story together. Let's say my cat, Pepper, is the subject. Pepper is generally very aloof and ignores most toys. One day, a pen rolled off my desk. She became obsessed. She batted it under the sofa, cried until I got it out, and then batted it under again. This continued for an hour. It's now her favorite game. It shows that her playfulness is there, but it's very specific and on her own terms.
That's perfect. It's specific, visual, and tells you about the cat's particular character. You can use phrases like, "You won't believe what she did," or "This is so typical of him," to lead into it.
These stories can be about any animal. The parrot who learned to perfectly imitate the microwave beep, the hamster who built an elaborate nest out of stolen tissues, the goldfish that always swims to the front of the tank when a particular person sits down. It's all about observing their unique habits.
Now, let's expand beyond storytelling. A huge part of talking about pets is discussing daily life and care. This is the practical, grounded side of the conversation that builds real relatability.
You can ask questions that show you understand the routine. Is he a morning dog or does he like to sleep in? This playful personification is very common. Who does the feeding or walking in your family? What's his favorite walk or park? For cat people, is she an indoor cat or does she go outside? What do you feed her? My cat is ridiculously picky.
And your answers can reflect the reality of pet ownership. She's my alarm clock, 6:15 a.m. on the dot, paw to the face. We share walking duty, but I'm definitely on morning patrol. He has a favorite path by the river. He has to stop and sniff the same tree every single time. He's on a special diet for his joints, so no more table scraps, much to his disappointment.
Talking about the challenges is also a massive bonding point. Every pet owner has them. The trick is to frame them with humor and love, not just complaint.
Instead of "my dog barks too much," try "he takes his job as doorbell very seriously. A leaf could blow past the window and it's a full security alert."
Instead of "my cat scratches the furniture," try "we've come to an understanding about the one chair she's allowed to sharpen her claws on. The sofa, however, remains a point of negotiation."
Using affectionate nicknames in these contexts is peak native speaker style. We call her the escape artist. He's our little vacuum cleaner. She's the queen of side-eye. It shows you've not just accepted the behavior, you've named it and folded it into your pet's legend.
Now, let's switch roles. You're not just telling stories, you're asking questions to keep the conversation flowing and show genuine interest. What are the best questions?
After the basic "what kind" and "what's their name," here are the golden, can't-fail questions. How did you choose the name? This almost always has a story. How did they come to live with you? This invites the origin story. Adoption, a gift, a foundling. What's the funniest or most surprising thing they've ever done? This is the direct story prompt. Do they have any weird or quirky habits? This gets at the specific, endearing oddities.
Being ready with these questions makes you an engaged, valued conversation partner. It turns a monologue into a dialogue.
So we've talked a lot about people who have pets, but what about people who don't? How do they participate in this conversation without feeling left out? It's easier than you think, and there are several graceful ways to do it.
The past connection. I don't have one now, but I grew up with the most amazing collie named Skip. He used to... Suddenly, you're sharing nostalgic, happy memories.
The future dreamer. Not yet, but it's my absolute dream to get a dog once I have a place with a garden. I spend an embarrassing amount of time watching dog training videos online. This is hopeful and relatable.
The honorary aunt or uncle or friend. I'm petless myself, but I'm the favorite aunt for my sister's corgi, Frank. I dog sit him, and we have a strict Saturday cartoon routine. This shows involvement and love.
The community appreciator. I don't have any, but I love animals. I know all the neighborhood dogs by name. There's an old basset hound named Murphy who I sometimes walk for his owner. This shows you're observant and kind.
The point is, you're never excluded. You just find your authentic point of connection to the world of animals. Often, non-pet owners are the most enthusiastic listeners.
So as conversations deepen, especially with friends, they might touch on more tender topics. Pets are family, so we talk about their health, their aging, and the deep bond we share.
The language here becomes softer, more careful. Instead of sick, you might say under the weather or not feeling himself. Instead of old, you might say getting on in years, a senior, or slowing down a bit, but still full of love.
You might share, "He's been my rock through a really tough time. Just the routine of walking him, having him there, it kept me going."
Or express concern. "We're just keeping a close eye on her. She's on some new joint supplements and seems more comfortable."
So what's the practical plan after our long chat today?
First, find your words. Think about your pet or a pet you know. Pick 3 true personality adjectives, not just nice. Is he loyal? Anxious, goofy, regal, mischievous?
Second, polish one short story. Use the situation, action, result framework. Make it 2 or 3 sentences. Practice saying it out loud.
Third, have 2 questions ready. What's their name? And what's the funniest thing they do? Will never let you down.
Fourth, know your angle if you're petless. Have your 1-sentence answer ready. "I don't have one, but I love hearing about them," or "I'm hoping to adopt one soon."
Remember, the goal isn't perfect grammar. The goal is connection. When you talk sincerely about the joy and chaos of animals, your English will carry that feeling. People will lean in and listen.
So we've covered a lot today just chatting about this wonderful topic. We hope it helps you share your stories and connect with others more easily.
Thank you for listening to the Lingusphere Academy podcast.
If you enjoyed this, we'll be delving into many more universal topics. Please subscribe so you don't miss them.
Until next time, take good care. And if you have one, give your pet a little scratch behind the ears from us.
Goodbye and happy talking.